And now, it's Ultimate Combat Radio with your host, Mike Stidham, on 1280 and 97.5 The Zone. Presented by Aztec Highway.
Let's put out the poll question real quick. I want to know from you, the listener, who do you think has the best chin in mixed martial arts? We talk about who's the toughest guy, who's this, who's that. Who's got the best chin? They don't have to be the toughest fighter. Now, a couple of guys come to mind. Locally, you think about Ben who's the guy that trained for your gym that fought Ben Fumano in East Center?
Jeff Bruce.
That guy was a beast, man. He took some shots and he just kept coming, and that's what I'm talking about. A guy like that, or nationally, Tank Abbott comes to mind. He wasn't the best fighter, but you could hit him square in the jaw, and he wasn't going anywhere.
That Cabbage guy, I remember him just being a human punching bag and never going down.
And then people are talking about Chris Lieben, having a good chin as well, but I really think that you have to consider Anderson Silva. He never gets touched on the chin. What's makes you the argument that that's a pretty good chin.
Well, yeah, I guess if you want to, I would say good head movement versus a good chin. But
if you can't touch my chin, that's a pretty good chin. And if it's not there when you swing at it. All right, now I understand we got Jan Jorgensen online, and we've been talking the last several weeks about his plight, and I'm sure he's talked about it on his show. Unfortunately, I worked during the day, so I haven't had a chance to hear what he had to say about it. But I was hoping to hear, have the listeners of our show be able to hear what he has to say about his suspension. Jan, are you there?
I'm good. I'm here. I'm good too. Also, sorry.
First of all, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. You're a guy that's making some noise in this game, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with your career. But talk to us. Tell us what's going on with your suspension.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I'm not sure right now I'm making the noise for the right reasons, which I'm trying to say. But from what I understand and from what I've talked to the commission, from everything that I've gotten worked out, there is no suspension.
Okay.
So what happened was you talked about the failed drug test, and I went and got everything taken care of. I unfortunately ate the poppyseed muffin a couple hours before the test, which wasn't very smart in and of itself, and I realized that. But so the next day I went and got a blood test, got everything cleared up, and I know when they met, I talked to Bill, the commission, and he basically said that he was going to recommend that they not suspend me, and from everything that I understand, that's been the case. And so hopefully, I'm pretty sure everything's been worked out, and we haven't had to go any further with it.
Now, are you satisfied with that? Because you were not able to fight, and you had a bunch of people to see you fight, and they deprived you of that opportunity. Are you okay with the ongoing decision?
I'm glad everything got worked out, but honestly, I don't like the process on the way that they go about it. I'd like to see them change the way that they do things in case something like that happens. It was pretty embarrassing for me. Honestly, it was one of the more unpleasant things I've ever had to deal with because, like you said, I had a lot of people there. And I would love to see them change their policies in case of a mistake like that. They could still allow the person to fight if they're protesting, if they are trying to do something about it. That they allow the person to fight while they're protesting the decision, or even maybe do the testing afterwards. I don't know, but because it was something that was pretty embarrassing for me, and I wouldn't want anybody else who didn't do anything wrong to go through what I went through, because it's not fun. I'm sure. I think a lot of people have been accused of things when they haven't. Then it's not a lot of fun to be treated like you're guilty of doing something wrong when you didn't do anything wrong.
I couldn't agree with you more. All right, so Jen, now that's what I heard, that it was just humiliating for you at the time, and my suggestion is this: that look, you tested positive, but you also have a doctor looking at you saying he's showing no signs of being under the influence of heroin right now. So if the real intent is to not allow you to harm yourself or somebody else by being under the influence, then couldn't the doctor have at least cleared you on a temporary basis until some more testing could be done?
I would have hoped so, and I even provided. I was standing there, and I even provided the wrapper for the poppy seed muffin while I was there. It was kind of funny because I tested positive, and I was just thinking to myself, what could I have done? And I pulled my brother aside, And he's like, "Did you eat a poppy seed muffin?" And I was just like, "Yes." A light bulb went off in my head. And I ran to my gym bag because I still had the wrapper. And I provided that to the doctor. And I was hoping that he could, because I had some sort of evidence, that he would have been able to do something like that. And I would like to see that too. I think that's a great idea, especially for something that's an opiate. It's one thing if somebody, tests positive for steroids, or tests positive for something that's like an upper, something that will legitimately give you a competitive advantage. But when someone tests positive for an opiate, you would hope that the doctor would be able to say, okay, if anything, this is going to hurt the person while they fight, and so let's allow them to fight while they fight this.
Well, Jan, I would really encourage you, and I really hope that people take heed to this, that please don't let it drop. And by that I mean I'm not saying be a rebel rouser or troublemaker, but it seems as though over the last decade I'm the only guy that goes in and complains about things, and so I've been labeled a complainer over there, when in reality there are legitimate complaints, but people just kind of let it slide, and so they just kind of feel like just Mike babbling again, and if guys like yourself would go in and say, look man, please, let's look at some reform here, maybe it would carry some weight.
Yeah, well, and there needs to be reform in everything. To say that there doesn't, people don't need to challenge the establishment, I know that's kind of a cliche thing to say. People that for some reason the establishment always likes to paint those guys as rebels and as bad guys. But you look at just all of sports, for example, look how many changes, look at all the things that are wrong with the NCAA, and look at how long that organization has been around, and they still have major issues. MMA as a sport that is so new, they still haven't had a chance to work out all the bugs and the way that they deal with things. A lot of things change for the better once, kind of by trial and error. So MMA especially, and with the athletic commissions, they are still so new in kind of commissioning and overseeing what happens in mixed martial arts, that there needs to be challenges, there needs to be changes, because they're not used to dealing with everything yet.
No, and they're not. And I think what they really are not used to doing is actually taking people's input that might know a little more about the sport than they do, and actually, taking that into consideration. So again, I hope you do maybe, follow up a little bit more and make your voice be heard, because I've certainly been championing this cause, because I really do. I feel like not only you, but the people that came to watch that show were robbed of seeing you fight.
And that's what I felt the worst about. It was one of those things where, it's one thing for me to go through what I had to go through, but I felt horrible because there were people, I put my name on the line. I sold them tickets. Yeah. They came to specifically see me, and they wouldn't have bought tickets for any other way. They wouldn't have bought tickets for any other reason. I felt horrible that I sold people, $20 and $50 tickets who came to see me who couldn't. And I felt like I had taken advantage of them, and that was definitely not my intent, and I felt really bad about that.
It certainly wasn't the case, and I think they know that. But so what is going to happen with you? What's next for you? What do you have on slate? Do you have any fights lined up?
Yeah, I actually do. Right now, I'm most likely fighting on September 30th on Jeremy Horn's card that he's gonna be putting on. We're still in the process of looking for an opponent. Unfortunately, Aaron Magro, the guy that I was supposed to fight at that card, where everything went down, he somehow, for some reason, is too busy to fight me now on September 30th. He did a lot of talking beforehand, and I just want to make it clear that if him and I don't ever fight, it's not going to be because of me.
Okay.
And so, with all the talking that he did before and after, I want to make sure I throw that out there.
Perfect.
And we're still looking for an opponent, and then hopefully again in November. So I've got a couple fights hopefully lined up, and I'm ready to get out there and get after it.
Well, good stuff. Once again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, and I appreciate I'm glad we got to hear your side of the story, and best of luck in your upcoming fights.
I appreciate you having me on and giving me the outlet to come and talk on your guys' MMA show. I know you have a lot of listeners, a lot of fans of the MMA world who don't get a chance to hear me on my show, and I appreciate you having me on and giving me a chance to tell a story.
Well, awesome. Once again, best of luck. Thanks again.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
All right, man. Jan Jorgensen. That was good. That was a good interview there. I really wanted to get his side of the story, and that was pretty telling because, man, he really took it.
How many people out there have something like that happen and don't get to tell their side of the story?
A lot, and that's what I'm trying to get the message through that, look, man, you do have a platform. You can go and challenge some of these things, and please do, because it's a shame that some of the stuff that happens.
Agreed. I like that he said it was cliche, but sometimes you gotta fight the fight.
It is cliche a little bit, but okay. Let's talk a little bit about the last UFC event. Did you get a chance to watch it? The Rio.
I did not.
Okay.
I was in the hospital with a staph infection.
Oh, yeah, you do have a legitimate excuse. They don't have pay-per-view in the hospital?
I actually walked into Lumpy's and watched the first half of a fight and started sweating and got dizzy and went to the ER.
Well, let me tell you what happened. Now, a recap of this event wouldn't be just if we didn't talk about the crowd. The crowd was just electric from start to finish. Now, this is the UFC going back to its roots, back to where all this started in Rio de Janeiro, and they clapped for non-Brazilians. They just clapped for MMA fighters, and it was really kind of cool to watch. Excuse me. Now, there was a fight where Rosamar Palhares, he found a new way to draw controversy. What he did is he dropped Dan Miller with a head kick. And he got on and followed up with some strikes. Then he just decided that Dan Miller had enough, and he jumped up and went up and jumped on the cage and started celebrating. And Herb Dean looked at him and said, I didn't stop the fight. And so he comes back into the fight, and his opponent, Dan Miller, cracks him and drops him. And the fight was almost over. Fortunately, Paul Harris was able to sustain, and he ended up coming back and winning by decision. But what a crazy circle of events right there.
What, do you recall the post-fight interview at all? I mean,
no.
Okay.
I will tell you this, that it was like, don't ever do that again.
No, don't do that. Let the ref stop the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. So then also, Ross,
should the ref have stopped the fight?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he was getting worked, but I mean, it was one of those Herb Deans. Now, we were criticizing Herb Dean for jumping in too soon just not too long ago with Fedor, and now so maybe he's backed up a little bit and says, all right, I'm going to let you guys slug it out here for a little bit. So I don't think it should have been stopped, but I mean, you could have argued either way, so it was one of those situations. Now, Ross Pearson lost despite a very well-executed game plan against Thiago Tavares. Excuse me. Yeah, I kind of mixed up over there. Louis Kane got KO'd by Stanislav Nedkov. Now, Kane reacted as oddly as I've ever seen in a fight. He got cracked with a shot, then he turned and ran and kind of tried to climb up the cage, and then he got caught by this Nedkov, and it ultimately got pummeled on the cage there, but it was really weird. It was like he was trying to find a way out of the cage. So it was really kind of a bizarre sequence of events that night.
Wow, two great things that I've never seen in MMA.
Exactly. And then we saw a fight that I thought was really good. Even in a loss, Ross Pearson looked awesome. And against Edson Barboza, these guys looked really good for 15 minutes. They just came out and went at it, and it was great head movement, great footwork, great, just really put on a clinic on how to fight. It was good stuff. You really missed out on that one. And then nobody gave Nogueira any chance against Brendan Schaub, but including the Great White last week said that Schaub would beat him. Well, Nogueira surprised everybody with his quickness and aggression. He ended up got a big win over Brandon Schaub. And we talked about last week where Forrest Griffin, I didn't really think this was a great matchup, even though he had beaten Mauricio Hua before. He just got pummeled and got beat up. But obviously the master of the night was Anderson Silva. He's just a genius, and he just looked genius against Okami, and he just made it look so easy. And he is just by far heads and shoulders above the rest in the 185-pound division.
Oh, man, that's awesome. I actually did get a phone call from Sterling while I was in the ER, and he gave me a play-by-play on that fight, and it sounds like I missed an awesome one.
It was. He put on a clinic. All right, so we're not going to have a Colbert report because we really just did talk to Jan Jorgensen about what we wanted to talk about. Anyway, coming up on the program, I had a chance to sit down with Hank the Vice Weiss. He discussed his upcoming bout with Nick Rossborough, and then also we've got Jake Ellenberger, the Juggernaut. He's going to be joining us on the program. He's going to be in the main event of the upcoming UFC Fight Night versus Jake Shields, so we'll be talking to him about that, as well as a lot of other things. And so you want to stick around for that. We're going to be talking to Jake Ellenberger when we come back.